I might do some sprinting or some wall piston drills or some running drills where I can lean into that wall and I can slowly work on isolating, switching and switching back and forth. Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. What's up everybody? Welcome back to Shift's YouTube channel. My name is Dave Tilley and I'm very excited today to talk to you about how to improve your ankle mobility. This is one of the most requested topics that people have put in, and I think a lot of people struggle with this for squatting or running like we'll talk about. And so if you guys want to learn the 5 things that I use with everybody to improve their ankle mobility, stick around in the channel. But if it is your first time back, please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe down below to make sure you get notifications about the new content that comes out. And then also drop in a comment below what you would like to learn in the future if you've been liking these videos, or if there's something in this video as you're listening to it or watching it that you find really interesting. Drop us down below because we listen to your feedback. All the videos that we have coming out soon are based on things that people have submitted to us in the comment section of other videos. So if you like this, you want to learn about something, let us know. On to this, ankle mobility, right? Very, very important. You'd be proud to know that our stick figure has returned. He was hired back after a wonderful contract in the last runs, so he's here to stay. When we do these things, we want to make sure we think about what movement patterns this matters for. I think it's sometimes easy to just work on random exercises and improve stuff, but if it doesn't actually carry over to things you want in your life, whether that's just general health and wellness to work out, or whether you have really high level performance goals of, elite level athletics, it doesn't really matter. You just got to make sure you understand why you're doing this. Ankle mobility tends to show up the most in a few things when people come to me and ask for help. We have the squatting pattern, right? The sprinting as well, and also anything with a single leg. So when you're squatting, obviously you need a good amount of ankle mobility to let the knees come forward so that we're not seeing the feet turn out, we're not seeing the knees cave in, and we're not seeing the back round. That's very common if someone has an ankle mobility problem, which, maybe they're doing Olympic lifting and they might catch a clean or a snatch really far forward. They might think it's their shoulders, but in reality, maybe their ankles are very stiff. Maybe a sprinting athlete, right, might not be able to get their nice translation through their arms pulling that leg forward because maybe the ankle is stiff in the back leg and they can't translate over their front leg when they step on that as well. Okay, also just for general health and wellness, doing step-ups or split squats or all sorts of other activities, sometimes that shows up as not being able to do a lift properly and work out because the ankles are tight. The max weight they can move or the speed at which they can do something like a jump or a sprint is limited because they can't really utilize all of their ankle mobility. There's a little bit of a bell curve here where obviously some people who have some ankle mobility stiffness, they get some benefits from that with power. But in the context here, if they are too stiff and it's affecting their movement patterns, that is obviously a problem. We'll want to fix that. As we do mostly with some of these videos, we always try to walk people through some steps to work on so you can work on these things at home. Number one thing, obviously most important before you dive into exercises, before you kind of dig into what you want to work on at home, is you're going to screen these things, right? So the most commonly used one is going to be a half kneeling dorsiflexion test. So we're particularly talking about getting these things to improve for, like I said, lunging or squatting or running or stuff like that. So we're gonna wanna work on things that involve the knee being bent. You can also screen the ankle with the knee straight, but as we'll talk about, there are 2 different muscles that kind of cross the back of the joint along with another one called your posterior tibialis that you wanna make sure you're screening the proper thing for what movement you wanna do. If you're doing this test, what you'll do is you'll lunge down, and we'll link some videos here, but you'll lunge down usually about 4 to 5 inches away from the wall is most people's recommended distance to try to get enough ankle mobility. But you're gonna kneel down, measure about 4 to 5 inches away from the wall. Get the knee to go straight ahead towards the pinky toe, right? A little bit off to the side, not caving in towards the inside, not letting the heel spin out, not letting the heel lift up, right? Those are all compensations we would see. And just see if we can get our knee all the way to the wall, okay? We're typically looking, like I said, for 4 to 5 inches. Generally, there's a little bit of a difference there depending on the length of their leg, like I said. But we're essentially saying, 1, can you get that 4 to 5 inches? And then 2, if you can't get that, why can't you get that, right? Do you feel some sensation in the front, or do you feel some sensations are pulling in the back? Okay, the front is typically going to be more related to the ankle joint itself, the ankle joint, or the mortise as it's called, talocurl joint, and then also the subtalar joint below it, which allows for motion in 3 directions. If you go too far and maybe the joint is a little bit stiff from an old injury, or maybe you've had some irritation of your ankle joint and there's a little bit of swelling in the joint capsule, it can cause the joint to not move as well, to not glide as well, and so that could be a reason why somebody has some limited ankle dorsiflexion. Okay, old injuries, like I said, sprains. Some people have taken some hard impacts in their days, and they sometimes have some irritation of the joint. That's one option. If you feel it more pulling in the back of the joint, okay, that's probably going to be more soft tissue. Okay, and that's what we're going to go on to next. We'll talk about each of these things. Okay, so here first, right, if it's soft tissue like we just talked about, particularly when your sensation is pulling in the back, the majority of the reason you're going to be limited there is going to be not the 2 joint muscle, right, which is the gastrocnemius, right? But it's gonna be more so a muscle called your soleus, okay? So if you're not familiar with anatomy, the gastrocnemius starts from above the knee, crosses down, forms into the Achilles tendon with the soleus. The soleus starts below the knee, crosses down, and then also forms again to make the Achilles tendon. So when your knee is straight and you're pulling your toes up, that's typically more the gastroc and the joint together. When your knee is bent, like squatting or running or stepping up to something, which is the majority of things that we see people who want ankle mobility to improve for, that typically comes down to the soleus muscle. So that's an error I see with a lot of people, is they're actually just stretching their calf with their knee straight, or they're doing some other work for it, but they're not working on bent knee work as well. Okay, so when we do soft tissue problems, so say you do this dorsiflexion test, you notice that the calf is feeling tight in the back, you have limited motion for that. Okay, again, the thing that we've talked about in other videos is that we like to do a combination of things to get this to feel better, right? We don't want to just go crazy and just crushing yourself with like really aggressive deep tissue and hoping that does the magical trick. That's not going to be really good. Okay, so what we obviously have talked about before is a little bit of like foam rolling, right? Maybe 30 to 60 seconds, right? Some specific stretching. I really like doing ankle rockers at the wall, which we can put a video up for here. 30 to 60 seconds, make sure we're rolling the inside of the calf, middle of the calf, the outside of the calf all together to get different portions of the inside and the outside of the gastroc and the soleus. Soleus is deeper, it's a little bit harder to get at, but you can still kind of tweak the corners a little bit. Ankle rockers at the wall are really, really great. So rock your knee forward 10 times, similar to the test. When you feel a stretch at the end range, hold that last one for 10 seconds. Really, really easy to do every day for a couple minutes. Okay, but the biggest one that I really like to teach people is eccentrics, as we've talked about in other videos. Okay, we know that eccentric training might be a really good way to actually increase the length of some muscles over time, versus maybe the first two are just temporarily reducing the tone of that muscle. So some soft tissue care, some ankle rockers, and then the eccentrics are probably gonna be the best bet. So eccentrics, the one that I typically see a lot of people not doing is, again, bent knee calf strength. So what I would do here is have someone sit down, put their toes up on 2 to 3 inch risers. I would have them put a heavy weight like a kettlebell or a dumbbell on their ankle. I would have them help with their hands to lift up and then let go, not let go, but hold it so the weight is on their knee and it slowly lowers down for about 5 seconds. So kind of hands help on the way up, toes are up on the riser, sitting down, slowly going all the way down for 5 seconds until we feel a pretty good stretch at the bottom. But again, this is a form of strengthening, which is good as well. So I would probably be doing 5 reps of 5 seconds with a 5-second hold at the bottom. Lower the weight down for 5 seconds, hold that bottom for 5 seconds, and then come back up, reset. Do 5 reps of those after you do this. So 30 to 60 seconds of foam rolling, specific stretches of the ankle rockers, and then 5 reps of the calf eccentric lowers. I think that's probably the best way to go about it. After that, we'll talk about how movement patterns come down to here. Let's say you're someone who maybe had an issue with the joint. Maybe you felt that sensation in the front of your ankle joint where it didn't feel so hot. In that situation, I would always recommend that you work with a medical provider, or you go get a doctor to check out your ankles to make sure that nothing is going on, right? If you have severe irritation in the front of your ankle joint and you feel like a big pinch when you do that, you could have some cartilage irritation, you could have a bone spur or something like that. I'm not saying that's always the case. Sometimes it's more just the stiffness, but if you're really feeling some intense pinching in the front of your ankle joint, you might want to get that checked out first before you start doing a lot of mobility work, because it could be a structural limitation and you might find yourself in more discomfort than less the more you go on with this. Let's say that you are working with someone, you want extra stuff to do at home. I like doing some joint mobilizations using your hands. So mobilizations kind of help gap the joint a little bit. There's a lot of theories to why this works, but maybe we're getting some more synovial fluid to swish around. Maybe we're just neuromodulating the joint to make it feel better. A lot of options. Personally, the one that I like is kneeling down, putting your hand on top of your foot. I'm kind of thinking about over the front of my toes in the middle of my foot. And from that position, you can gently kind of lift your knee up as if you separate some space there, and then rock back and forth nice and easy. Okay, so ankle rockers are a great way to do this at the wall for the soleus and the calf stretching area, but doing a little bit of joint gapping, lunging, one hand goes on top, lift that up a little bit gently, and then rock back and forth. Or some people like doing this with a band, where they wrap a band figure 4 around their ankle and they lean backwards and they rock back and forth over that lunge. Okay, that works too, but again, working with a medical provider is key here, because you have to know what motion you're working on, making sure the glide is going in the right direction. Okay, in my experience, not a lot of people have really huge joint limitations unless they're seeing someone for like a medical issue. So I would say try some of those mobilizations, retest and see how it goes. Just see if that makes a difference over time. We have some foam rolling, some stretching, some eccentrics. Joint mobilizations are a great option to do as well. Another big key point here is that we have to make sure this shows up in the movement patterns that we're going to work. So again, this is very specific to the sport or the thing that you want to do, but I really find that training the proper movement pattern with that newfound ankle mobility, probably in a lighter load situation, is really, really good to do this. Say for example, for squatting, right? If I'm working on squatting, maybe I would do some goblet squats. I would do some barefoot goblet squats after I do this little series over here, some joint mobilizations where I squat all the way down really, really low with a goblet close to me. Really focus on leaning my knees forward and using that ankle dorsiflexion. Hold that for a couple seconds, put the goblet down, stand back up, pick it up, lower that down again, eccentric, hold the bottom, set it down, stand up. Very good specific way to kind of work on that newfound ankle mobility. Another option, so say I'm running and sprinting is more what I'm looking for. In this, I might just do some sprint drills. I might do some sprinting or some wall piston drills or some running drills where I can lean into that wall and I can slowly work on isolating, switching and switching back back and forth. I could also do some marching, very slow marching, trying to work on that nice tall kneeling position with that control is very good as well. I could also just do some lunge sprint starts, right, to lean over that front foot and get going. A lot of different options here depending on what you're wanting to work on, right? But those are really great things to do as well, just for sprinting, some step ups or some split squats or something like that. Maybe my first set of those is just an unloaded body weight squat, but I'm really focusing on the full range of motion. 4 to 5 working sets. Maybe I'll just do that first set of step ups or split squats in my warm up on a deficit possibly. So I'll elevate my foot. That will allow me to go really deep into my range of motion without super heavy load on me. And I can work on warming up and prepping that ankle range of motion. A friend of mine, Chad Vaughn, very high level Olympic weightlifter, taught me nice little Olympic lifting warm up that I still use myself today, but it involves putting your toes up on some heel elevation, toes elevation, and flat surface squats. I personally like that for like people who are Olympic lifting or trying to do deeper squats. I find an unloaded barefoot situation is very helpful to warm up with that, right? So if you're looking for that, we can find that video and we can definitely help you out. Okay, so once we go through all of this, we might have some good ideas about things in our warm up, things to work on. The most important thing, which everybody seems to miss here, is going to be consistency and then proper technique, which also could be your program. If you are doing all of the proper things, you're stretching, you're doing some soft tissue stuff, you're doing eccentrics, you're doing a nice warm up, but then when the weight starts to go on, your technique falls apart, or you only do this once every 2 weeks, you're not gonna make progress, right? So you really have to be disciplined about consistently doing maybe 3 to 4 things every single day to get your ankle mobility better, and then really have a good technical awareness of where your knees are, where your hips are in space when you squat, when you run. It doesn't matter if you do all of these things well, if the weight starts to go up or if you start to work, you get tired and you let your technique fall apart and your knees start to go funky, you start rounding your back, well, you're not using that ankle mobility. So you wanna really make sure that you're always reinforcing what you're doing over and over and over with proper technique and proper movement patterns. I would try these things for at least 3 weeks before you retest. Do your screen up here and say maybe you're 2.5 inches away from the wall. You get worked out with a medical provider, you get some stretches, you do all this stuff, you do the goblet squats, maybe you modify your program and you only box squat, maybe do some slower sprinting drills, not full on because you're maybe getting a little bit stuck there. Come back in 3 weeks after doing it every single day and see if these things have improved. If you improve by 1/2 inch, that's amazing, right? If you find that you're not budging at all, again, you might have an issue with the joint, you might have an issue with consistency, and again, you want to seek outside help for that. Okay, so don't just keep spinning your wheels doing the same exercises. Switch some of the exercises up, switch some of the approaches that you're doing, and just keep retesting and see how it goes, right? Some people, unfortunately, are born with very, very stiff ankle joints because the bones themselves are shaped differently, or they have a lot of big old injuries, like if someone has like a fusion in their ankle, or if somebody had a really big surgery. Unfortunately, that is not going to be the best thing to get the ankle mobility back. You might have to think about modifying things, maybe elevating your heels when you squat, maybe doing more single leg based things like step ups and split squats, more single leg RDLs, thinking about modifying a program to not squat as deep or do as deep of motions, and just again, depending on your goals, what you want to work on. Hopefully that is helpful. If you guys enjoyed this video, like we said, just do us a favor, like and subscribe below, drop a comment below and let us know if this was helpful, and then again, what videos you want to learn from, because literally every video we've done so far comes from a suggestion from the community, from the audience. So let us know what you liked, and I hope you enjoyed this video.